and welcome back to the God the Artist podcast. I'm your host, Morgan McCarver, and today we have special guest Mary Potter Kenyon. Mary, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I am Mary Portson now, but my writing is under Mary Potter Kenyon.
I see. Okay, so you have like a pen name then.
Yes, it's
Very
a pen name now. Yep.
okay, great.
Well, I
Um,
got married. I was going to say when I got married, I didn't change my name at first. It was 5 years ago. And then after a couple of years being married to him, I could see how much it meant to him. And I thought, well, I'll just write under Mary Potter Kenyon and but I'm Mary Portson.
that's cool. So tell us a little bit about growing up, your childhood, how you discovered that you were a creative person.
I think that because my mother was such a creative person, everything she did was art. It seems like we were very poor, and she had 10, my parents had 10 children. And so it was maybe partly a necessity of making our doll clothes and making our clothing and making teddy bears for us and creating quilts and curtains and rag rugs. I mean, all her whole life, she was just that kind of creative person. So growing up with her, and she was 43 years old when she picked up a knife and a piece of wood outside and just started carving. I mean, who does that when they're 43 years old? They just think, oh, I'll carve a statue. And so that's what she did, though. And so she eventually developed what would become a home business of paintings on barn boards and paintings on canvas and wood carvings, beautiful wood carvings. And so growing up like that and seeing a mother like that, you just don't, you think everybody's mother is like that. And so you think for yourself, you color on paper and you play with Play-Doh and you get your hands dirty in the dirt and create creations out of mud or whatever you do because you see your mother doing that kind of thing. And my dad was creative in his own right, of that he could take two non-working stereos apart and put them together and to make one stereo that worked. So you just grow up like that. And as long as I can remember, I had a pencil in my hand, and for me, the creativity came out in doodling and drawing and also writing. But the writing was the only skill I continued after I graduated from high school and from college. Was I started writing, thinking, well, this is a way a mom at home could make some money, and so I'm that kind of creative, but I see creativity in everybody and everything because it's there. So I didn't start studying creativity until after my mom died and realized, you know, this creative person, there's something to this creativity that faith and creativity are just intertwined for me because my mother was also very faith filled.
Beautiful. Can you talk a little bit about, you have mentioned before that people are designed to be creative. What do you mean by that?
Well, we see it in our kids. So I have 8 children, and you see in your kids when they're little, they don't care if they're coloring outside of the lines or if their pottery from mud looks funny or whatever. They're just so creative. And then I have watched what school and people and society does to those little children who are so creative. And so I knew it was in everybody, this creativity. I didn't start studying creativity till after my mother died, and I wanted to write a book about creativity because I thought there's really something to this idea that each one of us has something in us, and people don't see it. Adults don't see it, and they don't try new things, and we get to the point where we think art is something amazing masterpiece you hang on a wall, and that's what art and artists are, those people who can do that kind of thing. But um, so I started studying the science of creativity at the same time I was studying the Bible and what God says about creativity. And the Creator created us to create. I mean, He did. He wants us to use our talents. He gives everybody certain talents, whether it's the baking that somebody does or the gardening somebody else can do, or the way somebody can get along with little children, or somebody else on the other end of the spectrum getting along with elderly. We all have something in us. And so I actually studied the science, and science concluded the same thing that the Bible concluded, is that we are designed to create. We're happier when we create. We're healthier when we create. We're healthier and happier when we can find out what it is, that one thing that might be in us, that we lose track of time when we're doing it, that we just feel good when we're doing it, whatever it is. For me, it happens to be writing. A couple of my daughters are artists, and my mother was an artist, so I had to get around out of that mindset of art, paintings, that's the masterpiece. And by the time I finished writing a book on creativity, I wanted to go out and share this with other people. So I started doing workshops on creativity, jumpstart your creativity, and talk to women's groups. And I would hear some people say I don't have any creativity in me, and I would like want to shake them, because you do. There's something in you that's designed to create, and you will be so much healthier and happier if you can figure out what that is. So the science proves it, but also the Bible says the same thing. But really, what the masterpiece is, in the end, it's our life. It's how we lived our life, how we figured out what our purpose is, what our specific talents are, and how we live our life, pointing all of that back to God.
So powerful. How would you say you found your creative purpose?
Like I said, I had pencil in my hand ever since I was a little girl. I loved books, and I could not imagine anything more amazing than to write a book or to be a librarian, just to do something with books. And so I wrote little stories. They were terrible little stories, but I wrote little stories. I just wrote poems. And after my mom died, she had one of those little books in her stuff when she died. And I thought, oh my gosh, she saved this. And I looked at it, and the drawings were bad and the writing was bad. But when sometimes it's inside of us, whatever it is that we're drawn to. And I loved essay tests in school. Everybody else hated, oh no, an essay test stuff. And even in college, I would never tell a college student to do this, but for some reason, I thought it was a good idea to write a poem on the cover page of my papers. I mean, not for English class, not for writing class, but for psychology class or something. So just always out there a little bit. But so I don't know if it discovered me or if I discovered it, but I do know my dad must have seen it in me, because I remember him saying, make sure that you use your writing and your speaking talents for good and not evil. And that stuck in my head all my life. He never saw me get published. So he died before I was published, but that's always stuck in my head, for good or for not evil, because I do know people who I think, boy, you're a great speaker. It's too bad you're speaking on that topic that is not godly and not speaking, for God and stuff. So the writing thing, I can't remember a time when I didn't write, when I wasn't jotting down things or doodling.
It's amazing. It's like your father had a prophetic moment there, seeing everything that you were going to become.
Yeah, yeah, and I
Um,
never forgot that. Yep.
so you are a grief counselor, is that correct?
Yes, I
Um,
got certified as a grief counselor after I had lost several people. I'd lost my mother, a spouse, and a grandson in the space of 3 years. And through that, I wanted to help other people through grief. So I got certified as a grief counselor, and now do that sometimes.
so sorry for your loss, but that's amazing that you're able to use that experience you had and then help other people. Would you say that creativity comes into that healing process?
Definitely. Now, I never journaled. I always wrote, but I never journaled until after my spouse died. And then I sat down to journal, and it helped me work out things. And I wondered how people did this without writing it down and working things out. And then also, I found out that any hands on activity, like making something in honor of that person, that helped me. So I do incorporate creativity when I do a grief workshop. I have them make an ornament with the person's name on, or a rock in their name, or we do vision boards or journaling, expressive writing for healing and stuff. So writing and being creative is a very good healing process. It can help people through grief. And so I always utilize some kind of creativity in our retreats.
To the journaling topic, what do you journal about? How do you know where to start with that?
Well, what I did, and I think I just did it instinctively, it was the 24 hours after my spouse died. I sat down and started writing what I was thankful for. That sounds kind of weird. You just lose somebody, but I could think of a lot of things I was thankful for. I was thankful for a life insurance policy that had been reinstated just 27 days before his death. I was thankful my daughter, who was 16, had felt led to tell her dad, I love you, I love you, I love you 3 times a day for the 3 months before. She doesn't know why, but I was thankful she allowed herself to do that. And so there's a lot of things I could be thankful for. I was thankful for my sisters coming in and being a support system. And after that, I try to always incorporate gratitude into a journal entry somehow, maybe just at the end of it, one thing that day, because science shows that if you practice gratitude, you start being grateful. You're a more grateful person if you start practicing it, just like any other thing that we do to practice it. And I don't, sometimes I'm babbling on about something that usually it's something I'm trying to work through. So for 6 years, I was kind of journaling grief, losing the grandson, losing the husband, losing the mother. And a lot of my journals would, how do I do this? Prayers, a lot of prayers in there. That when I married my husband, we've been married almost 5 years now, and I was widowed almost 10 years by then. I wondered if I could even write through joy, and I filled more journals since I met him than in the 10 previous years that I had filled. So yes, we can journal through joy, and it just helps me to work my way through something. Some people like a prompt, like a journal prompt. I don't really like that. I don't like, maybe I just don't like somebody telling me what to do. I don't know. I did not like a newspaper job much either, and they were assigning me stories, but I was being paid to write. So maybe it is this thing in me that I don't like to be told what to do, but I just kind of, I don't journal every day. It's maybe when I have something I'm worried about, something I'm thinking about, something I'm thankful for, and I just start writing about it. I might write down Bible verses. I might write down prayers, but I can go back to those old journals and revisit those times. And it actually helps me because I can see, oh, I've grown so much spiritually, or, I was struggling with that back then, but I'm not struggling with that now and stuff. So I highly recommend journaling for anybody.
Do you ever
You ever
use what
use?
you've written in other forms? Like, have you put that into your books?
Yes, actually, pieces of my journal have appeared in books. I wrote a book on grief, and so I actually shared one of my journal entries, which was I had gone to the grocery store and I started crying in the peanut butter aisle. And I thought, why aren't other people crying in the store? Because surely there's other people who have gone through something bad. I bolted out of the store, but I went home and wrote about it because I had to figure out, okay, why would I be crying in the peanut butter aisle? Because my husband had loved peanut butter. Or I used to blog too, and I would always end up in the emergency room around the same time of year, thinking I was having a heart attack. Heart attack. Well, my first husband had died of a heart attack, and that's when I figured out, oh, it's because my body is remembering what happened. And I was fascinated to read the science that says every cell in your body holds memories. I mean, to me, that's amazing that our body holds memories. So even if we think we're fine, even if we're not dealing with something, a date will come up and maybe our body responds because it remembers what happened. So that kind of thing I would blog about or journal about and then share it with other people so that they know, okay, I am normal. It's okay to cry in a peanut butter aisle. And if I'm having stomach aches or headaches or something around this certain time of year, that's why.
It's incredible that the science aligns with all of that.
Mhm.
And you
Yeah.
do such incredible research about that as well.
And I don't mind sharing personal stories. So to share pieces of my journal in my writing, it feels like if you're not transparent, how in the world can you ever help other people get through things? People say, how can you stand up there and talk about Jacob, my little grandson who died, and not be crying? And I always think, well, how would I help you if I'm standing up here crying? I want to help you find something in this. I want to help you not be broken by this.
So you've actually written 7 books. Can you tell us a little bit about each one?
I had written my very first book was about homeschooling back in 1996, and it no longer pertains to homeschooling at all because homeschooling is so much internet, so much online, And back then it was all paper and swapping with different families and stuff. So that was my first book, and I always had the goal to have a book written before I was 40, and so that was published before I was 40, and that was a small publisher. I think I had 2 copies of it exist in the world anymore. So it wasn't until after my first husband's death that I actually ended up signing 7 book contracts in the space of 6 years. And the first one was on couponing and the history of couponing and what's in the minds of all these people who coupon. So I interviewed hundreds of people who were couponers. A woman who makes $500,000, a man who is a construction worker who runs to the store and uses his coupons and stuff. So that was a fun book to write. I feel like God started to be in my writing after that, because I wrote about caring for a husband with cancer. I wrote a grief book about losing 3 people and finding God in that, because that's when I turned to God, and that's when I got a personal relationship with God, was after those deaths. And for the first time in my adult life, I picked up a Bible and started reading it. I was 52 years old. I'm almost ashamed to say that was the first time I'd read the Bible, but I was finding all my answers in the Bible, and I was finding prayer, the kind of prayer that's personal prayer. And so I wrote about that journey. It was just as much about grace as it was about grief. And I wrote a fun book about letter writing with a friend who had written letters for 30 years. And so that was kind of friendship linked by letters. And then God came out in the Called to Be Creative. That book, I felt the Holy Spirit leading me through the whole thing. It really took 7 years to write, because I jotted down the notes after my mom died, because I thought she was so creative, and not everybody practices their creativity like that. And so I started, but it was years before I actually sat down and wrote the rest of that book. And so I felt God in that book. And my husband and I self-published a book last year, Soulmates, Path to a Praying Partnership, because we discovered what praying in a marriage can do for a marriage, and how different a marriage is with prayer and God at the center. And so we knew we wanted to share our story, our love story.
That's beautiful. Do you pray together or separately?
It was our second date. I loved him so much on the first date that I thought, oh my gosh, this is a man God brought to me. I have to put God in this relationship. So I knew that when I asked him on the second date, at the beginning of our second date, I said, can we pray together? We need to pray together. We need to bring God into this relationship. And he said yes. And so I stood there and prayed with him. And I know we were both raised Catholic, so what it used to be is Hail Mary, our Father, and that was our prayer life. But he heard me talking to God as if God was my friend. And so we both learned to pray like that, where we're talking to God. And if we don't start a day with prayer, we'll call each other on the phone and say, oops, we forgot, or we'll rush and do it in the middle of the day. But we try to start each and every day with prayer, and then we end each and every day with prayer. So we're praying together. And we did not do that with our first spouses. And the difference, it's amazing. It really is.
I'd love to hear about some of those differences you've noticed.
Well, it seems like we don't ever argue, which sounds crazy, but we feel like maybe that's because we keep God at the center, and we know that we need to protect our marriage. So it's like we're putting a hedge around our marriage. And if we're very transparent with each other, if one of us is feeling negative about something or worried about something, we just share it with the other person. I think sometimes marriages get to the point where you think they know what you're thinking, but they do not know what you're thinking. They never know what you're thinking. So we just say it, as hard, whether it's hard or not to say. And any decision we're making, even a small decision, we go to God and we ask for his help. And Nick thinks it's funny that before I go into a thrift shop or Goodwill, I will pray and ask God, if you've got something there for me, show me where it is, and stuff. And I come out with the thing that I said that I was looking for or whatever. The other day I went thrift shopping with my daughter, and she's 22 now, 22. And I said, boy, I'm disappointed, because we went to 3 thrift stores. And I said, I have some black sandals in my Kohl's cart, and I don't want to spend that much on black sandals. I really thought God was going to give me a pair of black sandals today. And I said, and she said, and she just pointed and she said, Mom. And there, where there shouldn't have been shoes, it was in a bunch of flowers and stuff, was a pair of black sandals, my size. They look brand new. They're a real expensive brand name. It's like, I thought, wow, this, she's learning a lesson too. We don't have to necessarily pray for shoes, but if we include God in everything, sometimes He gives us a gift of shoes or whatever else it is. So prayer is just, we wish we had prayed with our first spouses. We wish we had helped them get to heaven that way. The way we feel like we're walking down this path together, but we were different people, and until we, accepted God as our Savior and followed Jesus Christ, we were not that person, and so there's no reason to have regrets. But everything is so much easier if you've got God in it.
And it's so beautiful that he cares about the small things, even as small as a pair of shoes.
Yes, yes.
So, how would you say your faith life really changed your writing? Could you tell in your writing style?
How did what change my writing style?
Your
The
faith.
Oh, yes, because I think for most of 30 years, my writing was just say, write what you know. So I'm writing about homeschooling, I'm writing about saving money, I'm writing about me stuff. Um, and now it isn't all about God, what I write, but somehow he comes into it somehow. So I write a lot about faith. I write a lot about, but I ask myself before I pray before I start writing. And the hardest thing for me about writing is that first paragraph, getting started and getting started. So I'll ask maybe my husband to go run some errands or something. I'll sit with God for a little while, and then it just comes. And I know my daughter has said that about her art or about her paintings too, is that she'll say Bible verses while she's painting, or she'll bring God into it and stuff. But I would say now my writing is for Him. It's for God. I am writing to point people back to Him. It's not always about Him, but somehow it's pointing back to Him. And that doesn't mean big sales. It doesn't mean a lot of money, but I don't think that's what success means in art either. I think it's doing something to glorify God, the gift He gave you. And that's why your art should reflect purity and gentleness and goodness, and your writing should reflect the same thing. We shouldn't have bad words in our writing. We shouldn't have sex scenes in our writing. And there's a way to talk about, you know, love without doing that. There's even a way a good writer can write about that somebody's cursing without saying the actual word. You can write that they're cursing or that they've never heard such language in their life, and stuff. So there's ways to do that, but our writing should always glorify God.
What would you say is your most prized accomplishment so far in your life?
Probably the book I wrote with my husband.
Mm.
Um, Although I mean, if you're talking about that kind of accomplishment, actually what I believe is the most important thing I ever did was to start following Jesus Christ. That's what, there's nothing more important to me than our eternal soul. And so when some people say, well, you're sure serious about this faith thing, I think, well, yeah, there's nothing more serious than our eternal soul. I mean, that means forever. But of tangible things that you can hold and touch, it would be the Call to Be Creative book, because there's so much of my mom in it. And then the book I co-wrote with my husband. He's a person who dropped out of school to go to the army at age 17. So when I met him and we started praying together, I said, I think we're probably going to write a book and probably speak together on the topic of praying. And he's like, that's never going to happen. I'm not creative. I can't write. I don't, and I said, I think you're going to be writing. And it was 3 years later that we had an encounter at a Bible conference where it just started. We went home and we were starting to write, and I would write this huge long piece, and then he would say like a paragraph, and I think, oh, I guess that's what this book is going to be, me writing and him with his paragraph. But then he came home from some powerful spiritual experience. And he started talking and talking and talking. I says, we need to get this down. This is the book. This is what are you willing to share this? And he said, yes. And so we hear from men that, oh, you're so transparent to my husband. And I think it's so funny that I wrote for 30 some years. And when the editor went through the book, she gave me all these things to change, but there was nothing she had him change except maybe one sentence. And I'm like, honey, do you know how unusual this is? It's because he was just real and straight with it and just transparent. And some of us with our art, we try too hard. We have to make it look a certain way or sound a certain way.
Like it's really meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
How would you say that process differed from your normal writing process?
It's hard to write with somebody because there's two voices. But for him and I, it was easy. And for my friend Mary and I, when we wrote Mary and Me, which is the name of the book, um, we really had to learn how to mesh those two voices coming together. But with my husband, it was like I would talk about something and then he'd talk about something, the same topic. And it meshed very easily, maybe because he's my husband and not he's also my best friend, but uh, that's different. He had not seen a writing wife. He married me and I wasn't writing for a couple of years because I was just having so much fun being in love after almost 10 years of widowhood. And I actually thought, uh-oh, maybe real happy people can't write. And then maybe 3 years in, I started writing little pieces like for guideposts or for Chicken Soup for the Soul or just little pieces. He saw me writing, and you go into your head. I'm sure you do as an artist too. When you're really into it, people can walk around you and talk, and you're not really hearing it because you're in that flow. You're in the creativity flow, and so he had to get used to like, hello, I'm talking to you because it's but I wrote with kids. I had 8 kids, so I'm used to having background noise. I'm used to making my head go there when there's other things going around me. My kids grew up with a mom where they would come to the desk to tell me something or ask me something, and I'm typing or I'm writing, and then they would say, "You're not even listening, are you?" And I would look at them, and they'd say, "You're still not listening. You're still on that page, aren't you?" Well, he had to get used to that. So that might be the difference. Is I had somebody who had to get used to something he wasn't used to.
I'm sure, yeah. And what would you say is the hardest thing about being creative today or being an author today?
Well, I think what I struggle with as a Christian is this idea of having to sell yourself, having to sell your books. Well, of course, a publisher puts money into your book. They want to see some money coming back. So for them, it's a business. And I struggled with that for a long time because I knew that I had to help sell it. I had to do something. I had to put myself out there, and I'm okay with that. But at some point, you have to ask yourself, well, is success as a writer reaching the people that God wants you to reach? That might not be a lot of people. I had my chemotherapist book sold so few copies, but I know it saved one marriage. And so I think, okay, that book did what maybe that's all it was supposed to do, is save that one marriage. So I think the struggle, which probably everybody in art has, is what is the value of what I'm doing? And the value is that you're doing it and that you're doing it for God, not how much you're paid or what you make. It's nice to make money off of things, and it's nice not to, um, but I want people to see the value in what they're doing. It's got nothing to do with money, not really. I mean, how much time you put into an art piece or how much time I put into writing, sometimes you never make that back. But just the act of doing it is being obedient to God. I am doing what you want me to do. Help me find a place where this is supposed to go. Help me get it into the hands of the people you want to get it into. Help me in for you, it would be art shows, to get into art shows so that people can see it, because obviously we can't sell something if nobody sees it. But to get that mindset of, it isn't about success for Christians is not about how much money something is. Success for Christians is obedience. And I'm obedient when God tells me to write something or how to write it, and the Holy Spirit does lead me in all of that.
I completely agree. That is the hardest thing to try to figure out how much you price something. And I struggled a lot with, especially with pottery, making things that I thought people would want to buy instead of what I wanted to make. So I completely agree. It is kind of that battle of the need to make money, but also knowing that that's not the ultimate goal in life and trying to figure out how you're going to pay for the supplies. And it's a back and forth battle.
It's funny because I ended up with my mom's ledger of where she kept track of her art pieces, and there was over 600 written down. And then she stopped writing them down, and I know she had other pieces. But it makes me so sad when I see her early things. Owl, $5, and I'm thinking $5. You probably put 100 hours in that owl, and she just asked for so little, because to her $5 was a lot.
What type of art did she make?
Well, so like her wood carvings, the owl might be 12 inches tall. And so it took her quite a while to paint. But she also did painting and made quilts, teddy bears, different things that she could sell at art shows or, you know, at contests that she would enter.
Yeah, wood carving, you definitely deserve more than $5
Yes.
if you have that skill, for sure. How would you say your work is being received with the Christian public and with just the general public as well?
Well, that's funny that you asked that because it was just yesterday I went through a box of letters because I was going to throw them away. And then I realized it was letters people had written to me that had read my book or gone to a Jumpstart Your Creativity class or come to my husband and I do a writers conference that had come to the conference. And I thought, oh, I don't really want to throw these away. I don't want to be like, oh, I'm so wonderful, but I don't really want to throw these away. And then I thought, well, what if I cut out the note and put it in a journal or in an old book and then wrote about that person or wrote about that event that I did, then I would leave something behind to my kids and they would see, oh, mom's writing touched people's hearts or mom, I didn't know mom did this or whatever. And so I thought, well, I could use those kind of like a junk journal type thing.
Great idea. And I think it's amazing, like you're writing this book to encourage others, and then their letters are encouraging you, and it's kind of building each other up on both sides.
It's very humbling to get those because it's like you don't think of yourself that way. The very first one I got in 1996 said the most famous Mary Potter Kenyon, and I just laughed when I looked at that. That's somebody, and they had beautiful handwriting and stuff. I can't throw that away, even though I'm not the most famous anything.
It's awesome. What are you wanting your legacy to be in the world of writing?
I think the legacy that I really want to leave behind is a legacy of faith and obedience, and that my husband and my book will show our faith journeys. And we have talked about this a lot because we are getting older, and we have talked about, well, what do we want in our obituary on the first line? We don't want it to be what we did or what we made or what group we belong to. We want to we wanted to say, well done, good and faithful servant, or something about our faith. And I think especially the Soulmates book and the Call to Be Creative book, they share my faith. And so grandkids, great grandkids, they can pick that up, and maybe that will be the seed that plants God in their heart.
That's incredible. How did you start to have these workshops coming off of the creativity book that you wrote?
I found out that for authors, writing articles about your book or doing workshops about the topic of your book. So I did couponing workshops, I did grief workshops or grief retreats, and then the creativity was easy. Just have them do some creative activities that kind of jumpstart their brain, use the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain and stuff. So I came up with some ideas because the easiest way for me as an author to sell my books is to give them something, demonstrate what these books can do for you, grief wise or creativity wise, and then they're interested in the book. And so I kind of started out doing workshops. I had an author of 124 books tell me he hated book signings. He says, I hate just sitting there at the table waiting for people to come and maybe buy something. He says, I can't grab them by the leg and pull them over. He said, so I do little mini workshops, and then they come for the workshop, and then they see my book, and they liked what I was talking about, And so then they would buy the book. And so I too hate like book signings, but I love doing any kind of workshop related to grief, creativity, um, anything that my books are about. And my husband and I have actually spoke to couples on the power of prayer in a marriage and stuff. And so he thought he couldn't do that either. He thought he couldn't write a book, but he co-wrote a book. He thought he could not speak in front of people, but he did that with me. And I said, God equips the called. He doesn't call the equipped. He'll equip you. You can do it. And he was the life of the party because he made some joke at the end at my expense, and I laughed just as much as everybody else because that's the way he is, and that everybody relaxed, with that. They're probably saying, "When's he coming back?"
How would you say the best way to jumpstart your creativity is?
Try new things, but don't worry about whether it turns out because, of course, you can't paint like somebody who's been painting for 10,000 hours. You're try new things without worrying what it looks like, without worrying what the end result is. Just play. If we could go back to the kids that we were and we played and we didn't care if we colored outside the lines, stop caring if you're coloring outside of the lines. In fact, science shows that if you're a daydreamer and if you don't color inside of the lines, you're actually more creative. So it's okay to not color inside the lines. So if people could just go back to whatever it was that they loved doing as a child and try to do it as an adult. Did you love making paper dolls? Make some paper dolls. Did you love baking with your mom? Bake. Did you love digging in the garden? Start gardening. Go back to your childhood interests because that's probably your natural inclinations are back there in your childhood. We left them back there, and we get busy with our work and we get busy with school, and then we lose all that. And if we don't start playing again, we're missing out on something.
Would you suggest that we should prioritize our creative moments?
Make time, right? That's so easy to say, but with jobs and kids and stuff. But what if we just give ourselves an hour a week to start with, or one evening a week, or take a little class? Take the libraries usually have free classes. Take something, jewelry making class, ceramics class, an art class, the ones that are just there for fun, not to give you a degree or whatever. And for me, it was when I had a lot of kids at home, it would be the hours before they woke up. So I might get up at 5, and by 7, they're up. So I'd have 2 hours. And so I learned to really get a lot done in those 2 hours. And then maybe after they went to bed, a little bit, give myself another hour. Or I would ask for Mother's Day for a gift. I'd say, I want a breakfast out all by myself. And my kids or my husband would give me a gift certificate, and I'd go give myself a Saturday morning, 2, 3 hours, and I could get so much done in that little bit of time because all week I'm waiting for that little bit of time.
And I'm sure that time is even more precious when you are looking forward to it and expecting it too.
Yes, yes. I never had any, I never knew what people talk when they said writer's block. What are you talking about? I have so much in my head that needs to come out. Where would this block come from? So never, ever in my life did I not write until I married Nick, my husband, 5 years ago. And then I got scared after about a year of not writing because I thought, uh-oh, what happened? Where's my creative side? We were having too much fun traveling, loving on each other, just living life without the writing. And I asked my mentor, I said, is it over? Is it gone? Is the writing gone? And he said, Mary, you've waited for almost 10 years. Can't you just revel in this? And then he said, it will come back. Well, after about 2 years, I got a letter or an email from him. And he said, is it coming back? Are you going to write again, Mary? And that was all the encouragement I needed just to start writing again.
And it sounds like you're writing even better than before, maybe with your husband.
Yes, not just the book with him, but I- I'm telling stories about what God has done in my life and getting published in different places. And everybody has a story. Everybody has a story. And I think if they can get it down, even if you're talking to a microphone or whatever, you're leaving such a legacy behind of faith stories, life stories, love stories. And if you're not a writer, maybe find time to at least journal so that you can get some of that stuff down.
Exactly. So, what is on the horizon for you? Do you have any more books coming up?
Um, no, if we're going to do a devotional together, we were thought about 365 devotions from us as a couple. Well, we got 364 more to write because I've only got one written. So if that's going to happen, I don't know if it's going to happen, but there's something in my heart. My daughter blogged during the death. My grandson was dying for almost 3 years. I mean, he went through cancer treatment and he went through a little remission, and then so she had 3 years of blogging online. And when I go back and look at her blog posts, she had such faith and such strength in those posts that I knew she was helping so many other parents or anybody who was losing somebody watching them, because her faith was like amazing to me. So I have asked her, I said, someday, can I publish those blog posts? And she said, well, it needs a beginning and it needs an end. And I said, well, you'd probably have to write the end because here you are, how many years out? And how is your faith now? I said, I could write the beginning and stuff. So I don't know when it's going to happen, but I feel like probably someday I will put that together, that book. I've already started taking the pieces out of her blog, and like I cry when I read it because I think she had so much faith as her son was dying, and from the age 5 to age 8, and she was a huge example of faith to me and to so many parents watching her. We had 80,000 people on his Facebook page the morning he died, and I thought you could live to be 80 and not affect 80,000 people. And we started doing random acts of kindness in his name and stuff. And so all these other people started doing random acts of kindness. So, well, it's been enough years now that I still once in a while do that. But it's just like, wow, that's a story that needs to be told. It's how did a mother get through that? How did parents get through that? And then have faith that comes out of that stronger faith.
Incredible. And what a wonderful testament and legacy as well.
Mhm.
Well, it has been such a good conversation. It's been such an honor talking to you. I want to let you have the last word. Do you have any advice or any encouragement for our listeners? Any places we can buy your books?
Yes, so all of my books are on Amazon, and Christian Bookstore has our Soulmates Path to a Praying Partnership. The Call to Be Creative is Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I mean, anywhere where books are sold, you can find my books. Those books are under Mary Potter Kenyon, and the book with my husband is Nick and Mary Portson. And also follow our Facebook page, Soulmates Path to a Praying Partnership. And you can follow us and find out about our writers conference if you're ever. We have people coming from other states here to Cedar Falls, Iowa for our conference and stuff. So it's not just a local thing, but and I would say to anybody who's listening, if you think you don't have it in you to be creative, you are wrong. That God designed you to be creative. There's something in you. He gave you some talent, something that's deep in your heart maybe, or something you abandoned as a child, and just start to you're going to feel so much healthier and happier if you just start utilizing that creativity he gave you and finding out what your purpose is, what the purpose he has designed for you.
And that's beautiful. Until next time, thank you.
Thank you.